Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, we've got a brand new deck tech for you, and it's all about... Smells like something's burning. So the ground rules for my deck techs are as follows. The budget is $50 or less, and that's an overall deck cost. So that cost includes shipping as well as commanders as long as they're $10 or less, but basic lands will not be included in that price. On my deck techs, I'm going to take you through the strategy, the tactics, and how the deck wins. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of AJ, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like AJ. And for the personalized deck tech, AJ chose Obosh the Preypiercer with a focus on burn with a sprinkling of Infect. Obosh is a 3/5 Hellion Horror that costs 3 Rakdos. It has if a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So this is basically a damage doubler for all of our odd cards. This doubles up damage on creatures as well as players, and that includes us. So this kind of a deck, we're looking to burn everything down, and hopefully we burn down our opponents first. Or we can be even more brutal and infect them out. So the strategy for this deck is pretty straightforward. We're going to burn our opponents and their creatures and double up odd burns. And Obosh isn't the only way to increase our burn potential. And then how we win with this deck is pretty simple. We're going to burn our opponents down to 0 or take them out even quicker with Infect. Again, with Infect, we only need 10 poison counters to take out an opponent. And as always with these deck techs, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, start the fire. First up, we've got Rakdos Signet, Star Compass, and Sphere of the Suns. By paying 1 and tapping Rakdos Signet, it adds both of our colors. Star Compass comes into play tapped and can tap for either of our colors depending on our land situation. And Sphere of the Suns also comes into play tapped, and we can tap for 1 mana of any color 3 times. Speaking of coming into play tapped, we also have Charcoal Diamond, Fire Diamond, and Guardian Idol. Charcoal Diamond taps for a black, Fire Diamond taps for red, and Guardian Idol taps for colorless. Next up, we've got some more colorless mana rocks with Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens, and Everflowing Chalice. And with Mind Stone, we can actually pay 1 and tap and sacrifice it to draw a card. Prismatic Lens can help us filter our mana, and Everflowing Chalice has multi-kicker too, so the more mana we put into it, the more mana we get out of it. And finally, we're going to be running Rakdos Locket, which can tap for either our colors, and by paying Rakdos, and tapping and sacrificing it, we draw 2 cards. But after we've ramped though, what's next? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 2, let it burn. First up, we've got some ways to make our damage even more effective. So on top of Obosh, these can help out a ton as well. Embermaw Hellion says if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent or player instead. And Torbrand pretty much does the exact same thing, but even better, making it 2 damage instead of 1. Next up, Fire Servant says if a red instant or sorcery spell you control would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. So although this won't affect our permanents, it can really bump up the amount of damage we're dishing out with those instants and sorceries. Speaking of double damage though, we've got Insult to Injury, Ingress Marauders, and Dictate of the Twin Gods. Insult says damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control will deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead. And then Ingress Marauders does the exact same thing, but it's on a creature. Finally, there's Dictate of the Twin Gods, which has Flash, and it says if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So this actually is going to double up everyone's damage, including our opponents, but it does have Flash, so we can cast it at the most opportune moment for us. But now that we've talked about ways to increase our damage, what are some of our damage sources? Let's go through some now, and tactic number 3, burn it down. First up, we've got 2 sources that deal damage to everyone, including ourselves, with Spear Spearer and Sulfuric Vortex. Spear Spearer has Defender, and it taps to deal 1 damage to each player. But again, with Obosh's doubling effect, since this is odd, that's going to be 2. And then Sulfuric Vortex is an enchantment that says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, Sulfuric Vortex deals 2 damage to that player, and if a player would gain life, that player gains no life instead. So first off, with Obosh in play, that's 4 damage each turn, and then also it prevents players from gaining life, which is huge for a deck like this. So once our opponents are in that hole, there's no getting out. And speaking of our opponents, we've got plenty of ways to just burn them. So now let's move on to tactic number 4, Burnout. First up, we've got Blister Split Gremlin, which has pay 1 and tap it to deal 1 damage to each opponent, and then whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we untap it. Next up, we've got Nettle Drone and Lava Crew, both of which can tap for free to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And then Nettle Drone untaps whenever we cast a colorless spell, and Lava Crew untaps whenever we cast a multicolored spell. And keep in mind that with all these odd converted mana cost cards, their damage is doubled with our commander. Next up, we've got Lightning Rig Crew, which can also tap to ping each opponent for 1. And then Tunneling Geopede has landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then Gutter Snipe steps things up a bit, dealing 2 damage to each opponent whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. And speaking of 2 damage, we've got Scab Clan Berserker. It has Renown 1, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, if it's Renowned, Scab Clan Berserker deals 2 damage to that player. So if we can just get in 1 hit with this can really punish our opponents for casting non-creature spells. And then Underworld Dreams can punish them for drawing cards, pinging them for 1 damage every single time they draw a card. And then Sir Conrad the Grim punishes our opponents for quite a few things. He has whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. And by paying 1 into black, each player mills a card. Finally, we've got the Indestructible Brash Taunter, which has, whenever it's dealt damage, deals that much damage to target opponent. And by paying 2 into red and tapping it, it's going to fight another target creature. So the bigger the thing that hits it, the more damage it puts out. But we're nowhere near done dishing out damage just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 5, Burnin' for You. So first, we've got some damage spells that we can double up on our opponents with Siphon Soul, Sizzle, and Breath of Malphegor. With our commander out, Siphon Soul is going to deal 4 damage to each other player, and then we gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. And then Sizzle deals 6, and Breath of Malphegor deals 10 to each opponent. And then we've got Flame Spill, which is going to deal 4 damage to our creature, but excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller. So this can either take out something big, or take out something small and dish out even more damage to the opponent. Next up, we've got 2 X spells that can help us out with Giant's Immolating Inferno and Comet Storm. Keep in mind that with these X spells that the converted mana cost is determined when we cast it with the X. So you're going to want that number to be odd, so keep that in mind. Anyways, Giant's Immolating Inferno is a legendary sorcery, and it's going to deal X damage to each of up to 3 targets. And then Comet Storm has Multi-Kicker 1, and we can choose target creature or player, then choose another target creature or player for each time it was kicked, and it deals X damage to each of them. And finally, we've got a way to utilize our damage even further with Chandra's Incinerator. First off, it costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to our opponents this turn. And then it says whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So for dishing out damage to our opponents, we can ping down their creatures as well. But speaking of taking out creatures, let's move on to our next tactic. And that would be tactic number 6, Burnt Ends. First up, there's Goblin Chain Whirler, which is going to deal 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. And as always, keep in mind for all these, Obosh can double them up. And then Volcanic Fallout is going to deal 2 damage to each creature and player, and it can't be countered. And Slagstorm gives us a choice to either deal 3 damage to each creature or 3 damage to each player. Next up, we've got some X spells with Earthquake and Rolling Earthquake. Earthquake is going to deal X damage to each creature without flying and each player, and Rolling Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without horsemanship and each player. We're not quite done with board wipes just yet though, so we've got Arc Bond, Volcanic Torrent, and Extinction Event. Arc Bond is an instant that says choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. And then Volcanic Torrent has Cascade, and it's going to deal X damage to each creature and planeswalker our opponents control, where X is the number of spells we've cast this turn. But at a bare minimum with our commander in play, it's going to be 4 damage for that X. And finally, Extinction Event says choose odd or even, exile each creature with converted mana cost of the chosen value. With a deck that has pretty much 100% odd cards, you know which one we're going to pick. But how do we actually get to all these great cards? Let's find out now in tactic number 7, Fire Starter. First up, there's Faithless Looting, which says draw 2, then discard 2, and it's got flashback for 2 in a red. Next up, there's Thrill of Possibility, which makes us discard 1 to draw 2, and Cathartic Reading, which makes us discard 2 to draw 3. Next up, there's Browbeat, which can either be a damage spell or a fantastic draw spell for us. It says any player may have Browbeat deal 5 damage to them, but if no player does, then target player draws 3 cards. And then Sign in Blood makes target player draw 2 cards and also lose 2 life. Usually we're going to use this on ourselves, but sometimes this can help finish an opponent off. And then some other draw spells we're going to be running are Read the Bones, Ambition's Cost, and Ancient Craving. Read the Bones has a scry 2, draw 2, then lose 2. And Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving both have us draw 3 and lose 3. Finally, we've got some permanents that can help us out as well with Theater of Horrors, Valakut Exploration, and Sin Prodder. Theater of Horrors says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exile with Theater of Horrors. And by paying 3 in a red, we can ping target opponent or a planeswalker for 1. But with the amount of damage that we can dish out with this deck, it's going to be very easy for us to meet its requirement. And then Valakut Exploration has Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card as long as that card remains exiled. And then at the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard, then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So this can be a fantastic source of temporary card advantage and damage. And in a similar way, Simproder says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent may have you put that card into your graveyard. If a player does, Simproder deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. Now, we've talked a lot about burning things and drawing things, but what else do we need to address? Let's cover some ways to throw a wrench into our opponent's plans in tactic number 8, Crash and Burn. First up, there's Rakdos Charm, which says, choose 1. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard, destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. And then Feed the Swarm says, destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, you lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. And finally, there's Chaos Warp, which is a fantastic removal spell for red. It says the owner of target permanent shovels into their library, then reveals that top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. So this can be a risky proposition, but it can help us get rid of pretty much whatever we need to. Now, we've talked about getting rid of our opponent's things, but how do we protect our own? Let's find out now in tactic number 9, Fireproof. First up, there's Wail the Nim, which can help us out in multiple ways. It says choose 1, regenerate each creature you control, or Wail the Nim deals 1 damage to each creature and each player, and it's got Entwine for a black. We've also got some more permanent ways to protect Obosh with Blessing of Leeches and Soul Channeling. Blessing of Leeches has flash, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and you can pay 0 to regenerate enchanted creature. And then Soul Channeling is also a repeatable regeneration effect by just paying 2 life. So even if we burn everything down to the ground, Obosh can stick around. But like I mentioned before, burning isn't the only way that we can win with this deck. So it's time to move on to our final tactic, tactic number 10, Sick Burn. First up, there's Tay and Strike, which gives target creature +1/+0 and Infect. This is an effect that can come out of absolutely nowhere and take our opponents by surprise. And then Phyresis is an aura that just straight up gives Infect. If we can get this on one of our creatures that pings opponents, they won't be around for long. Now, these cards are both fantastic finishers, but there's one that stands above the rest. And that would be the Golden Pig, which is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Grafted Exoskeleton. Grafted Exoskeleton is an equipment that costs 4 and it costs 2 to equip. It gives equipped creature +2/+2 and Infect, and when it becomes unattached from a permanent, we sacrifice that permanent. So first off, like Phyresis, this can be a fantastic way to help our pingers ping down opponents quicker. And because this is an equipment and not an aura, it can stick around when that creature dies. So then we can attach it to another pinger to finish out the game. And on top of that, thanks to that +2/+2, this turns Obosh into a one-shot kill. This is an incredible card for this deck, and it can really speed up our kill clock, and that's what makes it the Golden Pig. Again, another big thanks to AJ, I had a lot of fun building this deck. And if you're looking to play this deck, consider joining the fantastic Play EDH Discord. Play EDH is a fantastic way to play Commander by webcam. I'm going to be including their Discord invite link in the description below. This deck has already been certified by them for low power, which is between Battlecruiser and mid power. So if you want to pick it up and play it as is, you can. And be sure to read their welcome information for more details. But now that we've gone over the deck, let's move on to the price breakdown. The average EDH Rec Obosh deck is going to set you back $223.65. Our deck is going to be a lot more affordable, coming in at $34.34. And with some of that money that we're going to be saving, let's take a look at some reasonable upgrades. First up, let's add in Wayfarer's Bauble by taking out Sphere of the Suns. Next up, let's add in Lightning Bolt by taking out Flame Spill. And then let's add in Rampaging Ferocidon by taking out Lava Crew. Next up, let's add in Arcane Signet by taking out Rakdos Locket. And then let's add in Stuffy Doll by taking out Sizzle. Finally, let's add in Cataract Parasite by taking out Lightning Rig Crew. And with that, the show's coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below... Okay, something's definitely burning. I gotta go.